Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Throwin MMA podcast. I'm your host, Adam Gerber, and what a bloody fight card we have to talk about. What a fantastic night of fights. Absolute crackerjacks. A lot of them went to a decision, but I tell you what, as far as decisions go, these were some of the best examples of how a full fight can be just as entertaining as a spectacular finish, as long as we ignore the highly touted main event, which we'll get to later. For the first time, almost the first time ever in Throwin MMA podcast history, we're not going to be talking about the main event first, you guys. We're going to be talking about the co-main event, which was maybe, well, without a doubt, the best women's fight ever in the UFC. But transcending that whole women's moniker, just one of the best fights ever in the history of the UFC. And I think it's funny, I have a habit of bringing stuff up right before the announcers do. I wish I wasn't alone in my apartment right now. I wish I was with someone who I was watching the fight with so that they could verify this for me, and it doesn't seem like a made up sort of humble brag thing. But as we were watching, I can't remember what round it was, with the memory, that they had just inducted Jones versus Gustafsson into the Hall of Fame, the first Jones-Gustafsson fight into the Hall of Fame, just before this fight, before this one was even over. I was like, well, this one, put this one in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. Put this fight in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. And 2 seconds later, that's exactly what DC and Rogan started talking about. Like, just put this in the Hall of Fame already. And I agree. I think it was absolutely fantastic. I can't say, what even is there for technical analysis? They marched straight at each other and punched each other in the face over and over again, and they wouldn't be persuaded to do anything else. They wouldn't be persuaded to stop, and they wouldn't be persuaded to quit, circle off, set traps. They were just full-blown balls to the wall, guns out, blazing on each other the entire time. It's very rare to see, and it's very rare even when both parties agree that this is the type of fight we're going to have and this is how our styles match up. Very rarely do both of them stay conscious for the whole fight after that. It's very rare to see two people so dialed in, like Weili, Zhang, and Joanna and Jedrzejczyk were, so evenly matched that even their general anaerobics, their cardiovascular, drops down just enough. They deplete at almost the same rate, so that even as one gets tired, the other one is getting tired at the same rate, so that the shots don't carry the same impact. You know what I'm saying? That it's usually one person gets tired, one person stays fresh, and that's how the knockout happens. But when two people can deplete each other, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, that's where these long, drawn-out, gritty wars come from. Where this is how you etch your name in the history books. That was some Muhammad Ali shit, as far as I'm concerned. And especially, you could easily give Joanna the win there. Easily. I don't think that, I don't know how to... I didn't score the fight. I've only seen it the one time so far, and it was very much like the Hooker-Felder fight, where it was such a good fight, I wasn't scoring it, and I don't even know how you would go through and score this, watching it. I don't even know where to begin breaking this fight down, let alone scoring it real time. Joanna's 1-2s off the front, she was very good at keeping distance right off the bat. And she was winning the low kick game, but Weili was sort of matching her. It was very much as I predicted. It was even, with Joanna edging it as far as technique and strategy goes, just because of her magnitude of experience at the highest level. But gradually over the course of the fight, the power really started to make up for that differential. It really made up for the skill differential. And as she started cracking her, it got hard. It got harder and harder for her to close that distance without receiving damage. And oh, that's another thing. I need to eat some crow on this. Is I part of the reason that I picked the result that I did, I picked Weili Zhang for the KO, the TKO, is because of Joanna's chin troubles in the past, which I will go on record and say are not there anymore. There is no question to Joanna and Jedrzejczyk's chin anymore. And her Her reasoning in the past was that I wasn't doing my weight cuts correctly and that cost me. And honestly, between her ability to take damage even from the first to the second Rose Namajunas fight, and then with some of the bombs that she ate, especially coming down the stretch here, as Weili Zhang was able to hit her more and more consistently. The first strike of success she was getting was she was cracking her with the left hook at the end of the combinations, which is, if you're going to fight Joanna and Jacek, the left hook is going to be a key to your game. She's almost always been dropped from the left-hand side. I'm pretty sure, nope, Carolina dropped her with a right hand, but Gadelha dropped her with a left, Rose dropped her with a left, and Weili Zhang was landing that left hook over and over and over again, sometimes with hitting so hard that I was pulling my hair back and going, how is she not gone out? How has she possibly not gone out? It didn't make sense. The durability of these two, the will, the determination, and the grit was just absolutely incredible. And I really don't want to try to break this down too much, because putting this fight into words, I don't really see how you can do it service linguistically. This was a absolute true expression of determination, heart, grit, the human spirit, championship mentality, skill, technique, violence. It was the pinnacle of human sports. I challenge you, and sure, you might be able to find a better fight, but I challenge you to find a sporting event, whether it be soccer or tennis or football or hockey, any of the above, that has that level of intensity and that level of not only intensity but intimacy between the two people, and just the emotion that was felt, not only in the determination but the violence of those two ladies. Wow, that was incredible. And I mean, the first thing that I said when that fight was over was I looked right at my friend that I was watching with, and I said, it is bullshit, absolute bullshit, that they do not put these ladies at the top, at the main event in these cards. Absolute crap that they don't put these types of fights up on the main event. The way that absolutely should have led the card. That could have been its own pay-per-view headliner. And I think it's time we really start at least the strawweight division. It has enough stars between Namajunas and Andrade and Jacek and now Weili Zhang. Start giving these ladies their own pay-per-view. Especially if you're going to be doing stuff like Aldo versus Cejudo, right? These women deserve to headline their own pay-per-views, especially with performances like that. And then on top of that, after saying that, it was almost a premonition, because then we sort of we foreshadow the absolute stink town that was the main event. We're not quite there yet. We got one or two more things to say, though, about the bells of the ball, Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So first off, I think you do a rematch. Honestly, I think that was close enough that a rematch is warranted. I couldn't clearly give it to either lady. I had no idea who it was going to go to at the end of the bell. I also don't think you necessarily need to do an immediate rematch. This all comes from, I think, the clear number one contender would have to be Tatiana Suarez. But talking to Dana White, she still has that neck injury. Not only she's not quite ready yet, it's really not looking good at the moment. So it's going to be a while before Tatiana Suarez makes it anywhere near back the cage. So what do we have left to work with? We've got Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who just had a super close fight with the champion. Maybe one of the greatest women's fight of all time. Maybe one of the greatest in standing right now. So far, it's the greatest fight of the year, and it probably is going to stay that way. This fight's going to be in the talks. It's going to be in the conversation at the end of the year. There would have to be some pretty insane happenings to dethrone this as one of the top 3 or 4 fights to be discussed for fight of the year. That being said, you also have on the next pay-per-view Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrade. And I think that is a very much very much a depends on who wins sort of situation. I think you don't need to see Andrade versus Weili Zhang again at all. That was an absolute smoke show. I mean, maybe Andrade could change it up with a different strategy, but especially with that performance against Joanna, I don't see Andrade having anything for Weili Zhang. Anything at all. Like, at all. You could see Rose doing it, though. You absolutely could see Rose doing it, though, because in the sense that Joanna and Weili were very much the clash of styles, they're both very strong pressure fighters. They just wanted to sort of come at each other. They're going to throw initial combinations, and then they're going to counter the counters, essentially, coming back from the other fighter. Rose isn't like that at all, and that's why she beat Joanna. She was able to utilize... She wasn't outdoing that fighting style with the same thing. She was just utilizing her movement to make that sort of fighting style less effective and less responsive. Because a lot of it comes from punch, punch, kick, punch, punch, kick. It's the receptive feedback of how your opponent's reacting. Rose Namajunas, by backing away and by gliding out of range of a lot of Jedrzejczyk's shots at the beginning of the fight, she really messed up Joanna's range, and Joanna didn't know how to hit her on the entry, and she also didn't really know when Rose could hit her. So I would love to see Rose apply that type of game plan to Zhang and see if she can make it past the power. It is at a point, though, where unless Rose has had like some pretty insane leaps in skill since she's been off, with how close that fight was between Joanna and Weili, and with how much more power Weili carries than Joanna, that's going to be a really tough ask for Rose, assuming she gets through Andrade. That's not even guaranteed, because she looked like she was having a fantastic night against her the first time, only to get slammed on her head and have it end. So we don't know how that's going to go. What I think for sure is going to happen is we're not going to hear anything about this strawweight title until after next month's fight between Namajunas and Andrade. I think if Andrade beats Namajunas again, I doubt Andrade is going to be getting another title shot. So I think they'll probably do the rematch between Joanna and Weili. If Rose wins against Andrade, I think they're booking that Weili Zhang Rose Namajunas fight immediately, as they should. And hopefully, after all of that sorts itself out, that should take itself to the end of the year. Hopefully by then, Tatiana Suarez will have her injuries figured out, because it would be a shame. It's really disappointing, especially when you think about Tatiana Suarez's story of coming from, dedicating her life to wrestling, and then when it comes to her time to go to the Olympics, she gets cancer. She gets, I think it was leukemia she had to deal with. Don't quote me on that. We're going to go with leukemia. She gets cancer and has to go through treatment, and because of the treatment, she misses out on qualifying for the Olympics. So that's already one life's dream missed, absolutely gone. Now because you've missed that out, you've used that as motivation to work yourself up and become one of the best female mixed martial artists ever, and you're on your way to doing so. But now the very discipline that you've used, dedicated your life to and used your whole life to get where you are, the wrestling, because of how you utilize it, she's very much a head-dominant wrestler. She likes to pin you with the top of her head and drive her shots from there. She has major neck problems. And now, right as she is reaching the pinnacle of her second dream, which is to fight for the UFC title, now these neck injuries are keeping her sidelined and keeping her, preventing her from achieving these goals. I mean, I think she can do great stuff, considering, especially when you think about, it was a bit of a lackluster performance against Nina Ansaroff. But the more you think about that, and the more you learn about her neck injury and the fact that she couldn't even feel her whole left or it was a left or right arm, couldn't feel one whole arm, pretty much one whole side of her body because of her neck problems going into that fight. Or she shot a takedown or something, hit her thing, and then whole of her body went numb for the rest of the fight. You got to get these things dealt with, because if you're in there against a Weili Zhang and half your body goes numb, you're in for a damaging night. Obviously. Joanna was fully capable. I still can't get over, and of course over the fight, Weili Zhang was able to land the right hand more and more, but like that right straight, which is eventually landing that right straight to the forehead, is what blew up Joanna's forehead. And can we just, oh my God, there's just so much here to talk about. What a championship performance from both of these ladies. What a championship. And the way Joanna came back after all that adversity and after losing the title and fought tooth and nail. There was never a moment of even exasperation. Just absolutely fought her heart out. It was like Rocky. She looked like Rocky out there. Both Rocky. She looked like Rocky Balboa. And she also looked like Rocky, by the end of the fight, she looked like Rocky from The Elephant Man. She looked like both Rockies. Fantastic. And and it makes me sad because if she would have won that would have been some Muhammad Ali shit. Oh man, what a great fight. I can't wait to watch it again. I think we've almost moved on here. Oh yeah, okay, I guess my Elephant Man comment leads to this. One last thing I wanted to say about the fight, which was Bilal Muhammad's comment on it, which was... Bilal Muhammad, by the way, has got some of the best live tweets as the fights are happening. He's got great insight. Bilal Muhammad says, Joanna deserves better than the memes that are going to be made after this fight. And that's so true. And I'm guilty of it too, because I just called her Elephant Man. All people are garbage, except for these women. Okay. How about that, too, on National Women's Day? To completely outshine the men's main event like that and the rest of the card. To just completely dominate and be the stars of the show on International Women's Day. Just a cosmic good feeling this fight card has given me. All right, that's more than enough time talking about this one. Let's move on to the main event, which I'm sure everyone is super excited to get to. So, in my prediction for this fight, I said, you really never know what Romero's going to do. And sometimes it's absolutely nothing, I guess. That's not something not something I included, but it's absolutely part of the equation of possibilities, apparently, because what the hell was that? Well, what was that? That was two counter-strikers waiting for the other person to take the lead. That was Yoel Romero, who has so much power and wrestling acumen, but has also gotten tired in fights before and gotten picked apart and felt helpless, which is not something you want to do. The famous quote, fatigue makes cowards of men, and I think that's more applicable in MMA than in almost any other sport, and the way that people show an aversion to getting gassed out really shows that, because once you're gassed, you're at the other person's whim. So Yoel Romero's afraid of getting gassed, and Israel Adesanya is afraid of getting his head knocked off by Yoel Romero. And so what this leads to is Yoel Romero being incredibly conservative and waiting to read Israel's movements and openings. Israel, on the other hand, is the king of mixing up his feints and his entrances and his openings so that he's essentially unreadable, and that he reads your reads and hits you accordingly. So they both waited, and nothing happened. When that first shot landed in the first round, you could definitely see a bit of a change in the demeanor of Israel Adesanya. He wasn't... People are criticizing him for not coming to fight. Yeah, he talked a lot of game about calling Yoel out and going, and he's going to finish him like no one ever did. And that's fine. He didn't. Sometimes shit doesn't work out that way. Maybe Romero was a little bit more than he bargained for. Okay? Fine. Sometimes the fights just aren't going to be the most exciting thing that ever happens. What he did do, though, which I think is interesting, is he not only won a Yoel Romero fight, but he won a Yoel Romero fight without losing a piece of his soul in the octagon. And I'm going to take that as an extra win. Even though you didn't finish him and it didn't look spectacular, you got through Yoel Romero. You got that win on your record. You proved to all the doubters that he wasn't some boogeyman that was going to decapitate you the second you faced him. And you got out of there relatively scot-free. Almost no injuries, What did Whitaker left with a broken hand? Torn MCL, ACL, tore his knee apart, orbital fractures, all of that, all right? And for you to leave there without a single injury and without that being a fight that's going to take years off your career and affect you the rest of your career, extra W in my book. I'm fine with it. And the fight wasn't even that boring because you had that tension of Romero's power and Israel's, his slickness, but also the way he leans back from shots. You can get caught with one of those. All you need to do is misjudge the distance once, and you're way back out of position, and you're liable to get completely knocked out unconscious. Saying that, though, even though the tension kept you on the edge of the seat and it was interesting enough to watch as it happened, I wouldn't go back and watch this fight. And even by the fourth round, after the fourth round, you kind of realize, oh, we're not precipitating something that's about to happen. This just is what the fight is, and it's what it's going to look like for the rest of the fight. You lose interest then even, right? So, whereas Jedrzejczyk versus Zhang was a classic that I could go back and rewatch anytime, and it'd make me a happy, happy boy. Adesanya versus Romero, put the W on his record, and let's forget this ever happened, all right? Much like the Anderson-Silva fight, which was like a glorified sparring session, all right? Which was also another counter-striker that Israel was matched up against. Are we seeing a pattern? All right, well, I know my pick for the next time Adesanya fights a counter-striker, and my pick is that it's going to look like Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. All right, what else do we got? Big Tan Dan. Let's talk about the ref. Big Tan Dan with the warning for timidity, which I thought was weird. The multiple times saying, give the judges something to score. Unless you're giving them warning for inactivity and you're going to take a point away, I don't really know how you can tell them to be more active. That seemed really out of line. Chalk that up to Big Tan Dan's out of line suggestions that he does sometimes, because that hardly made any sense to me. I didn't get that at all. Give the judges something to score. They were. I had all the rounds scored. That's actually another great point. Is I had all the round. I was able to score this fight because nothing was going on. I had the first two. I thought, first one for sure, clearly Romero. I gave the second one to Romero too. I know that one's a bit contentious. 3 and 4 are pretty clearly Adesanya, and then 5 I thought was kind of a toss-up round because Romero started doing what he probably should have been doing the whole fight. So, in that sense, if you think about Izzy's point fighting strategy circling off and banking on leg kicks, you could say, well, Izzy fought Yoel Romero smart. No, I don't think that at all. Fighting smart, if you're going to point fight someone, fighting smart is not giving up the first 2 rounds. That's not what fighting smart is. That really was, for you to say oh, well, that was Israel's plan. He was going to come in there and outpoint him because he didn't want to risk, the big power. No, that would you could tell by the way Israel started fighting and the way he went to that and the way he gave up those first 2 rounds. If you're going in there and you're planning to point fight, you're not giving up the first 2 rounds. If you're point fighting, you need to win rounds. And you need to win them early because they're easier to win early than they are to gut them out later. And he was never able to set his pace, and that dictated the fight that he fought for the rest of it. If you're going to say that he chose to fight that way and that he fought smart, no. He survived, and he did it very well, but he survived. That was not him coming in with a very smart game plan. If you're fighting smart, you do not give up the first 2 rounds. Dana blames Romero. I blame them both. Dana's obviously not going to blame the person he's got to promote for the next fight unless his name's Tyron Woodley. Or maybe he learned the lesson from Tyron Woodley and how everyone hates him. Dana, though, get this, you guys. Dana admits that they should have waited for the Costa fight. And that the Yoel Romero fight was kind of a big mistake, especially the way it turned out. Isn't it weird how sometimes the fights don't turn out to be that interesting when you don't base them off of the meritocracy? Crazy! So Dana admits that it was a mistake to have the person coming in, this person coming in off 2 losses to fight for the title. He also mentions that the matchmakers were against it originally because it didn't make sense, right? It didn't make sense. Even though this is the one that makes even more sense than the non-meritocracy title fight that's going to happen on 250 that we've been talking about. These 2 fights have been inescapable. You talk about them together because Yoel Romero doesn't deserve a title shot. Aldo definitely doesn't deserve a title shot. So now that we've had this, this result, in this fight that went against the meritocracy, and now Dana has even come out and said this was a huge mistake. We should have waited for the real number one contender. My question is, who's ready for Cejudo Aldo? Woo! So excited for that fight now. So much more legitimized because of the results of this one. Ugh. I can't believe you can go out and say that and not have that click that like, oh yeah, we've got another one coming that's just like this, and it's worse, and it's less justifiable. All right, we're going to move on to the rest of the card because the rest of the card was dope. We got Beneil Dariush versus Drakkar Klose. That fight was awesome. Drakkar Klose came in, and I figured that he would. He has that really like well planned, straight shot game plan. Very bread and butter. I thought Beneil Dariush would have more tools to win, and eventually, I think that sort of is the reason for the way the fight came out. Drakkar Klose though came out looking for a knockout way more than any other fight. He hasn't come out looking for a knockout ever. He came out looking for a knockout in this fight. Clipped Beneil a couple times, almost got it, but was in the end just a little bit too overzealous. He got clipped at the end of one of his own combinations by an overhand right. They were swinging in the pocket. He gets clipped at the end. And then Beneil chases him across the cage and smashes him with an overhand left that knocks his mouth guard out. Had me jumping up, screaming at the TV. Had Joe Rogan throwing his arms back across the two commentators like he was someone's mother in a minivan and they had to stop too quickly, and he like stops them from going too far forward, acts as their seatbelt. And then, of course, you have Daniel Cormier rolling his eyes and falling into Joe Rogan's lap like the... What's that meme where the guy, oh yeah, but I'm not a rapper. And they go, oh. Here, let me do the sound version of Daniel Cormier going by. He goes, but I'm not a rapper. Oh. Like that. Let me try one more time. Not a rapper. Oh. There, perfect, nailed it. Great fight. Unanimous decision. Neil Magny over Jingliang Li. I had Li Jingliang as the winner for this fight, picking them last week. I had Jingliang. He looked so sharp again. I'm just going to call him Li. I had Li, called the Leech maybe. I had the Leech. He looked so much more technically clean and well put together against Izzy Dos Santos, and that sort of fell apart here. I didn't really see that as much. When the fighters make those big leaps in their game, you expect them to just sort of build off of it. But it seems that Lee sort of regressed a little bit here. And not only that, but Magny got way better during his time off. That was one of the best performances I've seen from Magny against someone who was almost tailored to knock him out. If you think about the last couple people Magny's lost to, the Ponzinibbio's and the... Who else did he get knocked out by? Oh, okay, one second. I'm looking at Magny real quick. Ponzinibbio kicked his legs and then knocked him out. Was it RDA before that? Well, I guess he beat Craig White. Larkin, Dos Anjos, and Ponzinibbio. Those weren't his last 3 fights, but those are his last 3 losses, and all of those people began by kicking the legs, and Li Jingliang looked great kicking the legs against Dos Santos. You could tell he tried here, but Magny was on it. He was right at distance. He was pulling the legs away, or he was checking them, or he was stepping in with 1-2s. He was keeping the Leech perfectly at range. This is probably the best I've ever seen Magny. I was so impressed. I was so happy for him. The only thing rusty about this return was Magny's hairline. Brother, you gotta shave that head. It's patchy all over. Oh my god. Next, we got Alex Oliveira versus Max Griffin. I thought Max Griffin would be able to control the chaos the way he was against Mike Perry and the way he has been against many other opponents. Cowboy Oliveira, though, came in with a suaveness that is not usually applicable to him when you're breaking down him in his fights. He was picking those shots off and fought much more akin to almost like Figueiredo fought against Benavidez, picking the shots off on the way in and eventually just clobbered him with uppercuts and cut Max Griffin above the forehead. This was a great back and forth fight. This main card slapped. This was fantastic. And a split decision again. Max did a great job. He absolutely could have won with that grappling control that he had at the end of the third. Oh, man, what a great main card. Couple and all decisions, but great decisions that were fun to watch the whole way through. Close contests, a lot of splits, but the good kind of split where a bunch is happening, so you can't decide what to give points to. Not where nothing's happening, so it's hard to make a decision because you have nothing to judge. Sean O'Malley came back and looked fantastic against Quiñones. He looked better than ever against Quiñones. He's never fought anyone as dynamic as Quiñones, never fought someone as complete a fighter as Quiñones, never fought someone as high up in the rankings as Quiñones. And so to come out and have a better performance against Quiñones than he's had against anybody ever in the UFC was fantastic. And they mentioned that he had put on some weight, like O'Malley's been put on some muscle compared to when he started. I didn't see it. Like, he didn't look that much more muscular, but his shots carried more power, undoubtedly. That's where you saw it. You didn't see it in his muscularness or his body type or anything like that. Where you saw it was he would kick Quiñones in the head, and Quiñones would block it, and it would still wobble him, and it would knock him off his feet. He was kicking him off his feet. It was unbelievable, honestly. The power that he was transferring in those kicks. And the punches, too. He never landed really a super clean punch. He clipped him a couple times, and it must have just been the power and the angle that he hit him from. But the power that he's carrying now is so obviously much more. Much, much more. And he's fighting a little bit more conservative now, too, which is... I'm down, man. I'm in on the Sugar Show 2.0. I just don't need to listen to any of your long-form interviews. If you've listened to that Joe Rogan experience with him and his coach. That's... Man. Mark O. Madsen against Austin Hubbard. Had a fantastic victory. Was throwing him around in the first. Wasn't able to implement his ground and pound as much as I thought he would against Hubbard. And Hubbard even started really sort of he was lighting him up in the third. Hubbard really began to take over the striking near the end of this fight. And I found out it was because Marco Madsen had his jaw broken in two places by a knee that Hubbard landed in the second. Hubbard had started timing Marco Madsen's entries into the clinch, or even just the way he would duck to the same side every single time Hubbard threw a right hand. And so Hubbard would feint the right, or he would just feint a bunch of punches and wait for Marco Madsen to duck under them, almost to go in for a takedown, and he would just lift up that left knee, and that first time he did it, it just landed straight on Madsen's chin. Must have broken it in a couple places, and I guess that explains the drastic momentum shift. A lot of people were sort of writing off Madsen after this performance as someone who could really be someone in the division. Like he said, he's got the potential to be one of the greatest mixed martial artists in the world. People after this performance were really not buying that, especially since he's 35 and doesn't really have a lot of time to strengthen up that striking game. But I think he's going to be an interesting presence, and I definitely think he's still more promising than people are giving him credit for, considering the way he fought through a broken jaw there for the W. Great fight. Another great fight, and I love seeing him standing on that pillar of grappling acumen. I love seeing that exemplified in the octagon. Speaking of grappling acumen, we've got Rodolfo Vieira, who also got jabbed up on the feet and front kicked in the face before finally going fuck it and just entering for the takedown. Very much unlike Duran Win in the next fight we're going to talk about. Rodolfo Vieira got lit up on the feet and then decided, oh, wait a second, I'm a world-class grappler, and just sort of ran at him and took him down and submitted him, like, easily. It was beautiful to watch. The technique, the control, the elegance that he had, and the way that juxtaposed the smashing, crushing, grinding nature of Marco Madsen's grappling. Super cool, I thought. Very super cool to have these back-to-back and to see the very different realms of grappling, but both at the most elite level being... why can't I think of the word right now? Not exposed, shown off. I can't I don't know. Anyway, we're going to talk Gerald Meerschaert versus Duran Win. Was a very close fight on the feet until right near the end, when finally the length of Meerschaert, he just kept picking Duran Win off on the way in. Duran, though, never mixed it up. When you are that tall at 185, you need to be mixing up those punches with at least takedown attempts. Even if you're not going to actually attempt a takedown, you need to fake it, get him thinking about it, help you land your overhands on the way in. But his entries are very basic. He needs to, with his height, the main thing he needs to work on are his entries, whether it's for a takedown or for punches, and he needs to make them look similar, and he needs to always have his opponent guessing so that they're not going to be able to throw those punches out on the way in like Mearshart was. Mearshart was intercepting him with those long telephone pole arms, and you need to have the opponent hesitant to throw shots out like that because they're scared you're going to duck under and shoot for their legs. For someone who has a high grappling acumen as Deron Winn does, the fact that he didn't even attempt to use it at all in this fight really disappointed me. Really disappointed me. And it makes sense that he ended up getting tagged to the point where he got so hurt that he got put on the ground and then submitted by rear naked choke. Great performance by Mearshart. Mearshart is just the... he's a hard-working man. He is. He's not especially physically gifted or talented, but he is the definition of just, I guess, not necessarily a journeyman in the good sense, in the non-insulting way to call someone a journeyman. He is an absolute student of the game, and he implements different techniques and veteran savvy in order to win. He's a true fighter if you're going to go under the mentality that athleticism is cheating. He's a Joe Lozon's fighter. And then Giga Chikadze was gifted a split decision against Jamal Emmers. I predicted Chikadze to win this if Jamal Emmers wouldn't utilize the rest of his MMA acumen and just tried to strike, which is what he tried to do for the first round, and he got lit up, and it was beautiful. It was the equivalent of watching Adolfo Vieira work. His grappling was watching Giga Chikadze just slam body kicks into Jamal Emmers over and over and over again. Great to watch. And yeah, but Emmers really started taking at the end. I would have given this, to me, this was a pretty clear decision for Emmers, especially the way he utilized his grappling in the second to take control of the pace, and then throughout the second and the third, he began styling his own strikes, landing his own strikes, and completely evading and having Giga miss his own. So this, to me, was a wrong decision, actually. There's a lot of splits on these that could have gone either way, and they were great fights. But as far as I'm concerned, Jamal Emmers took this one 2-1 over Giga Chikadze, but always going to be excited for a Giga fight in the UFC. So interesting, the dynamic that he brings. And then Dana Bagtarel knocked out Guido Canetti just with a freaking huge left hook, and that was awesome. And I don't know much about him, so we'll see where he goes from there. Where's he from? That's a funny-looking flag. He knocked out an Argentinian. Mongolia. Cool. All right, well, that's UFC 248. Great card. Hopefully a sign of things to come. And let's all put in one last prayer for Khabib versus Tony happening. Got to make that happen. That's the next pay-per-view, guys. The next pay-per-view. How freaking exciting is that? And if you want, you can follow us on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube if you're listening here, join our group on Facebook if you want to do some discussions about the dumb stuff I say every week, and you can tell me I'm an idiot and I'll respond to you. What else? If you're in the Calgary area on April 30th, I am going to be doing a reading of a short story I've had published for the Freefall magazine launch, where you can come and listen to me read, and I'll talk to you if you want to talk to me, and all that stuff. Also, if you would like to buy this magazine that I've been published in, it would be incredibly helpful in supporting, and also you'd be supporting fantastic Canadian literature and one of the best fiction magazines in Canada. So you can get your copy of Freefall at freefall.com, or freefall.ca, sorry. You can order single issues, or you can order a whole subscription for the year for only $20. If you want to get a single issue, it's $12. My single issue, if you want to buy the single issue, mine's going to be launching April 30th. So after April 30th, you order Freefall magazine, you're going to be getting a short story from your old pal Adam here. So you get that done. What else? I'm going to be or editing up the articles on the throwinbonesmma.com website. I've got a historical piece on why Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov is the most historically significant fight in the history of MMA. It goes through the history of Tony Ferguson, the lineage of his jiu-jitsu, tracing it all the way back to the samurais in Japan. It goes through Khabib Nurmagomedov, the importance and the origin of the wrestling culture on Dagestani society, going all the way back to Balkan Civil War in the 1800s, an invasion of the Russian Empire, and the prevalence of Islamic extremism in the area. And then the third article in the collective, it's a collection of 3 articles. The third article is more of an exploration of Tony and Khabib's time in the UFC, their seemingly intertwined destinies, and a history of their personal beef. So if you want to check that out, I spent a crazy amount of time on it. Everyone who's read it has told me that it's fantastic, and it's a great way to get yourself not only hyped up for next month's fight, but educated as well. So you can tell your friends why it is a more important fight significantly than even like Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman. So there you go. There you go. And you know what? I'm going to stop rambling. That is the end of this segment. Make sure... Oh, one more thing, though. Sorry, that's not the end. Make sure you tune in later this month. We're going to be posting the interview that me and Kyle did with Jorgen De Castro. So before his appearance at Fight Night DC on the Ngannou versus Rosenstruck card, he's going to be fighting Greg Hardy. Make sure you go there and give that interview a check, because I think we also mentioned before the fight was even announced the possibility of him fighting someone like Greg Hardy, and it was a very interesting interview. He works at a high school as a security guard, and he's just a sweetheart of a man. So if you could give us and him the support, that'd be fantastic. So once again, that's a Jorgen De Castro interview, UFC heavyweight, that'll be coming out within the next week. Thank you guys so much, and keep an eye out for the other clips and stuff if you're just watching a single clip on YouTube.